Thank you, Nancy. Let's move on to agenda item E. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to licensing chair David Diaz.
Okay, good morning. The meeting summary report can be found on page 47. The licensing committee met on November 7th, 2019. It was a productive meeting, and the committee identified several items for the board. Items for the board consideration include outsourcing CSLB exam administration, creating an applicant survey, and amending the strategic plan objectives. Are there any committee members that would like to add or comment on the committee meeting summary report? I guess not. Do any board members have any comment? Nope. Anyone from the public have a comment? Okay. Can I please get a motion and a second to approve the committee meeting summary report?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do board members have any comments? Does the public have any comments? No. Felice, can I get you to do a roll call, please?
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Frank Altamira.
Aye.
Waggy Beltran.
Aye.
David De La Torre.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Yes.
Susan Granzella. Diana Love.
Aye.
Jim Maureen.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Mary Tykert.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The next item is the licensing program update, which begins on page 53 and contains statistics through the end of October. I've asked Justin to provide an abbreviated update today. Justin?
Thank you, David. I'll just quickly run you through our program update. On page 53, you can see year-to-date, we've received 35,543 applications. My projection is that we hit 42,651 by the end of the year. That, for the last 5 years, that blows it out of the water. Our applications are up. Thankfully, if you direct your attention over to on page 54 is just a breakdown of the processing for calendar year by application type. On page 55 is our processing times. You'll see most of our processing times we're still keeping at 2 weeks, with the exception of the exam apps. They're about at 3 weeks, and that's really due to the volume that we're receiving and processing. Moving forward on our disposition of applications by fiscal year, again, we're processing on a pretty consistent basis. We're utilizing our staff just to make sure that we keep our processing times, but no new information to provide you on that note. On page 58 is our renewal processing statistics. This is actually the opposite story. So at the moment, we've received about 107,000 renewals in the year with the end of October. That gives us a projection of 128,000 for this calendar year. You'll notice, just looking at our past years at the bottom of page 58, we always, Stacy describes it better than I do, but we always sort of have a high processing year just based on when you came in, because it's a 2-year process, and we always have a low processing year. This is our low processing year for renewals, but even now, with 128,000, that's going to be lower than what we typically see. With that, we'll move to workers' comp on 59. No real new updates for workers' comp processing at this time. On page 60 is just a breakdown by license type of who has exemptions and who has plans on file. On page 61 is our background unit statistics. I'm happy to report that our actual processing times for criminal applications is starting to go back down. You may recall my update in the summer. We had a lot of staffing issues. We had to fill several vacancies. We're fully staffed now, so we're getting that down. And the staffer I'd really like to highlight for this meeting works in this unit. She's very new to the unit, but she's doing an amazing job. Her name is Cassie Brazil. She's new to the unit, but taking on that workload. And in addition to that, we have several other areas in our experience verification that needed assistance. Cassie was the first one to roll up her sleeves and get to work, so I just want to thank her, and I really appreciate her doing those efforts. Moving on page 62 is our experience verification statistics. This also, we had the same staffing issue. We had several vacancies that we filled. These processing times are coming down as well, now that we're fully staffed in experience verification. We have a breakdown just by classification type of the actual experience verification statistics on page 63. On page 64 is our statistics for our licensing information center. That's our fancy way of saying the call center. Our call volume remains pretty regular, and our call time, we always shoot to make sure no one's on wait for more than 6 minutes. Right now, we're certainly meeting that expectation. Our judgment unit statistics are on 65. There's no real new information here. We're tracking with what we usually see for the year. There's just more of a breakdown on page 66. And on 67 is our outstanding liabilities collected. Again, no new story here. At the moment, we're tracking with what we typically see. With that, I'm happy to answer any specific questions on any part or section of the report. But a couple other things I just wanted to highlight, just based on what I've heard so far today. It can be difficult to apply for a license, and we're certainly looking at that, especially when you're going for an A or a B, because it's a little bit more complicated than the straightforward specialty classifications. Some things that we're looking at are process improvements. Some of those process improvements we updated to our licensing committee. Those were essentially using some internal paperwork so we don't have to return applications to applicants when there's some minor issues that we can resolve over the phone. With David and Tanya's help, we implemented a new form where staff can actually document, take contemporaneous notes with the applicant on the phone so that we can make corrections on our end without having to go through the mail process. In addition, in the experience verification unit, we've implemented several changes to just sort of reduce the time it may take while we're doing an experience verification investigation. We're continuing to work through the various units to see where we can cut down on processing times and help make the process more clear. In addition to that, there's a strategic goal, and I've been working with public affairs to make sections of the licensing parts of our website far more simple. They can be quite complicated and detailed, and we want to really trim that down so people get the information they need quickly. And finally, we're also working, and you'll hear more when we get to the strategic plan item, we're working on an online renewal application, but more importantly, to just improve confusion in applications, we're working on a sole owner online application for contractors, and we hope to roll that out near the end of this year. Mid this year, end of fiscal year. And part of what I'm really excited about is when you get to the experience portion, we've been working with public affairs to create examples of what we're looking for in that section so that people aren't going into it blind, not sure what they should be putting down. And we're hoping that helps in the process, but we'll continue to identify improvements, and we would appreciate your help on that. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Nancy?
Yes, I have a question about renewals, and Justin, as a building official, I totally understand it, because it's similar to renewing building permits and getting people to renew. I'm just curious, you did mention online renewal application. Can you just refresh me on the process? They get a letter? What's the follow-up to try to encourage renewals? So
right now, roughly 60 days before your renewal is up, you get a renewal in the mail. And what you're responsible for doing is providing the check and that properly signed renewal back to us. It can get complicated for especially some more of the complicated businesses. There can be confusion about who's supposed to sign. So there's a lot of calls about that for the more complicated businesses. But what we're trying to do to improve that is we're rolling out an online renewal, actually February of this year, so it's coming very shortly, for anyone who is a sole owner without an RMO. That's the most straightforward renewal. We actually need to pursue legislation to simplify the signature process, and you'll be seeing that. But once if we were to obtain such legislation, our vision would be to just start building that out so that everyone can renew online. But we're going to start with a sole owner that doesn't have a separate RMO.
I didn't hear it in there, but do you email them? Like, I know the letter goes, but do you ever consider
we-
emailing?
We can email, but it doesn't happen right now automatically for all licensees, but when it's requested, we do email it out.
How many renewals are we looking at a month?
Total for the year?
Yeah.
Our
Well, let's look-
projection-
A month, like, let's say
Oh,
on
a
a monthly
month.
basis, yeah.
Give me just a moment, my apologies. It's on page 58.
So my question is, you know, a lot of times people get email, it winds up in spam. Sometimes we send it to the wrong person at the office.
Uh-huh.
What's the possibility of following up with a phone call?
Well, we get about 10,000 a month, and my renewals unit has, we have 8 people. So that'd be tricky, but we can
Could
talk
we do a
about some
robo-dial?
alternatives.
Could we do a robo-dial?
I'm not sure, but I can certainly look into that.
Yeah, because I think, you know, the personal touch is very helpful when it comes to the renewals, especially when you have corporations that maybe 2 or 3 people down the row or down the line get the renewal notice and they don't know what to do with it. And we've had that problem where the wrong person gets it and the employer or the contractor isn't able to renew their license on time. Right?
Okay.
So if we could find some sort of different technology, maybe send a letter or notice to the employers saying, hey, or the contractors saying, you know, this is something that we're gonna highlight. If you see this number come forward on your phone or whatever, you know, it's not the Russians or the Chinese, it's us.
Got it. So what I'll plan to do is meet with our IT and provide an update either at the next license committee or the next board meeting. One other item that David may want to be pointing out is the retroactive renewal.
Before we get to that, I was wondering if Stacy Paul, our budget manager, could comment a little bit about the renewals and what we've seen historically. I think what you were pointing out is the calendar year statistics. So Stacy, maybe fiscal year.
Yeah, so he's seen a decline on calendar year renewals. I'm actually for the first 4 months of this fiscal year. It is a non-peak renewal year, so typically this is a lower fiscal year. I am seeing a 6% increase compared to 2 years ago. So just keep in mind, Justin's is on calendar year, mine's on fiscal year. So seeing a slight increase, as well as the springtime typically is a higher peak for renewals. And so I'm really hoping that this is going to pan out to be, you know, better than last year.
Any other board members, any comments?
I think just one comment on the robocall. If there's any opportunity to cross-train our other phone service staff, if they have downtimes, that they can maybe pick up some of that workload.
I would assume that's a possibility.
I'll make sure to provide a comprehensive report. We'll certainly look into it. It's certainly something we could do at the License Information Center, and I'll see if I've got other opportunities that I can utilize as well.
Thank you.
David? You know, and going on that, maybe being a little more progressive and maybe when they do have downtime, reaching out to these contractors and saying, hey, this is coming up, keep an eye out. Maybe building that relationship a little further. Thank you.
Okay, anybody from the public have a comment?
I'm not sure this is exactly the correct place to interject my opinion here, but I will. So I got a building construction degree in Florida in 2004, and the Florida application process is quite stringent. And one thing that they do quite differently than California is break it down into essentially general building and general residential. The way that the Business and Professions Code and the internal, or not the internal policy, but the book from the CSLB reads, a person framing a house in the mountains can qualify for a license to build a hospital in San Francisco, and that does not seem very good to me. I would recommend in the future, as a multi-year, 5-year, plan, considering adding, in addition to the remodel contractor classification, break it down into general engineering, general building, which allows you to build any buildings up to 3 or 5 stories tall or something, and general residential, which permits you to build structural houses up to 3 stories tall. Then into the remodel classification, which allows you to remodel anything, but maybe not structural things. To me, it just seems a little a little weird the way that's broken down. I would also tier the license structure, which might be able to help with budget, to where you have, a general remodel license is $300, a general residential contractor license is $400, a general building contractor's license is $950, and a general engineering license is $1,500. Because if you're getting your general engineering license, $1,500 is an insignificant amount of money in today's economy for the type of work that's allowed to be performed. And I think that's an area where you guys might be able to help with your budget a little bit. I noticed that was on the agenda. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public with a comment? No. Moving on to testing program update on page 71 of your packet. Justin, can you provide the update?
Yes, I'll be brief. One thing I just wanted to point everyone's attention to is we've got some item banking coming up that's big. We're actually going to be doing the A, the B, and the C36. You can see just a breakdown on 72 of where we're working at, but happy to answer any questions.
Any board members with any comments or questions? No. Anybody from the public? Nope. Moving on. Board members, if you can turn to page 77. The staff has completed its cost-benefit analysis for outsourcing CSLB's exam administration unit. Justin will briefly summarize the report's from findings, lay out the options the board has for its potential decision, and explain the staff's recommendation for our consideration. Please note that we also have representative from DCA's Office of Professional Exam Services in the audience if we have any implementation questions. Justin, please proceed.
Thank you, David. Just to make a correction, we did plan to have someone here, but it looks like they're just not here. They're probably delayed in traffic, so hopefully they'll be here soon. With that, I'll just quickly run through the highlights of the report so that you can make your decision. The executive summary starts on 78. Essentially, the cost breakdown that we've worked with DCA's vendor, PSI exams, as well as DCA, and we also worked with our budget office to get our internal numbers here. The breakdown is in-house administration is roughly $3.2 million, about $73 per exam. Outsourcing is $2.6 million, or $59 per exam. A decision to outsource would result in a savings of 19%, $624,000 a year. Outsourcing would also mean that we would either be moving certain staff into other units where there are vacancies available, or we would be surplusing staff. In addition to that, the specific cost breakdowns for the in-house example you can find on page 84. That's the table. And for the costs for the outsourcing, you can find on page 86. Those are the breakdowns. I'll give you just a moment to sort of flip through those. I'm happy to go into any of those particular line items in detail, but the overall message is we would have a 19% savings by outsourcing. One other table I'd want to direct your attention to is found on page 79, and this is, it's right at the top. It's just comparing the two scenarios. It's the scheduling days, it's the test centers available for outsourcing versus in-house administration. With outsourcing, you will get another day a week where you can schedule. In addition to that, there are some after-hours scheduling that would be available to outsourcing. You're also getting more locations where people could travel, so there'd be less traveling for those individuals, especially in North. I think the biggest trips are really those individuals who are taking a test from the Northern California areas, because the furthest north we go is Sacramento, so they'd have to be coming down to us. With that, essentially, staff identified two options for the board's consideration. The first option is essentially do nothing. We'll continue with in-house exam administration. The second option would be for staff to pursue legislation. That would be the next step in this process, to authorize the board to outsource exam administration. I'm happy to go into detail on what that looks like. One other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention before the board had their discussions was on page 80, was on page 88. This is just a breakdown that our budget office was able to do about if we outsource. It would be a phased-in process. So phase one, we would shut down a few of the locations, and for that, those zip codes that they serve, at that moment, PSI exams would take over those particular, and it would be a slow phase-in based on the rents that we have when we get out of our leases, et cetera. Happy to go into detail, but just wanted to make sure you had a broad overview before you started your discussion. Thank you.
Okay, before we make a motion, do any board members have any questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, Susan?
Does the estimate produced by the vendor include transition time? Because did they work that in as we transition our exams to their staff to those locations? Is that included in this cost analysis?
You actually wouldn't see much of a cost from the vendor for the transition time. There's actually, after we had some more detailed discussions with PSI exams, there's a great model out there of what's happened at the Department of Insurance for their exams. Essentially what would happen is they would develop what they need to do on their side cost-free. They wouldn't be charging us because they would only charge us per exam they administer. And so let's just assume, for example, the Berkeley location were to be closed. That same day, PSI exams would essentially start administering those exams, and we would already have worked through that out through the implementation process, and so the bill would just come at the end of that month.
So the transition work they are doing to accumulate our tests
Would be at no
was
cost.
included in their
Yes,
in their
yes.
cost? Okay, thank you.
Whoops, sorry, Nancy?
I'm just, we get certified, and when online, this type of outsourcing had happened to our exams, we were kind of against it in the very beginning, because we're just against something new, probably. But as it went on, the one thing over year after year after year, all these bonuses that are pointed out, even though you say 4 to 5 days per week, and then it's 5 to 6 days, but you get evening hours in there, so that's a bonus, and everything else is a positive. You can schedule online, you can do it by phone. It's video monitored, they have a program, it's all secured, way that they do it, and that would be something you'd have to make sure of. And then you're now providing that to multiple people. What we found on certifications is we started receiving more people getting certified. So to me, I'd look at this to say, if this was something we did, we might see more people getting exams, because you're now putting this out further and making it more accessible to people. So I like this. Thank you.
Just to tag on to Nancy's comments, the other nice benefit here is I think there'd be maybe more apprehension if we were talking about exam development. We will still develop the exam. The only proposal on the table is to consider the outsourcing of administration.
Frank?
For the phased plan, was rent the only consideration, or are there other factors there?
There are other factors, my apologies. We would certainly be looking for any available vacancies that our employees would want to utilize within our current CSLB structure. For example, most of our test center locations are located either in the same building or close to our enforcement centers. There may or may not be vacancies there. If there aren't vacancies available for a particular location, we would have to go through what's called the surplusing process. And that takes time, notification, and work with the particular union of the affected employees.
Okay, because the only comment I'd make is I'd hope rent wasn't the only consideration, because it seems like pretty minimal cost compared to the overall cost savings of shutting those locations down.
Correct. I think the key here was just making sure we weren't double paying as we did the implementation process. I wanted to make sure the board wouldn't be paying for a rent while we still had exams being administered by PSI. But it wasn't the only factor. It was also those employees.
Okay.
Any other comments from the board? Dave. No, Dave.
Yeah, quick question. You mentioned a surplus of staff if we implement the outsource.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen with these the surplus staff? Would they be retrained in another department or anything, or would they?
I think Tanya will probably be able to speak to this a little bit more than I, so I'll defer to her, and then happy to answer any follow-up.
Yeah, so when we're looking at surplusing staff, it's a process that we work through the Department of Consumer Affairs and our control agency, CalHR. We'll meet and with the union and work with the union on the placement of employees. Many times employees can be placed. I can't guarantee all will be placed, but it's a very lengthy process. It's where you're put on what's called SROA, and so employees are given preferential treatment for the classification that they're in and for comparable classifications. So it's not just limited to the Contractors Board or even the Department of Consumer Affairs. It's for all state agencies must first select those that have been designated as surplus or SROA. And because of that, with hundreds of thousands of state jobs, there's typically vacancies throughout the state and in these areas. So with a phased-in approach, really our belief is that we could place these employees over that length of time, and we would do it in a thoughtful and methodical way and working with the unions on this issue.
Thank you.
Any other board comments or questions? Seeing none, any from the public?
So back to when I got my license in Florida, the certified building contractor's license, in I believe 2008. It was a 19-hour-long, 4,900-page open book examination. Then I moved to California, and I passed the building contractor's exam and subsequently the hazmat exam with absolutely no studying, no knowledge of California law, nothing whatsoever. I can just pass these tests. I think outsourcing these exams is a great idea. I know that Florida's exam has been outsourced and somehow they're doing it online now. I think that you might want to look into that in the long term. And I would encourage somebody to look into how Florida is doing their exams and making the exam a way that is really based off of California-specific codes and rules. It seems to me that the exams are 30% mathematics that's taught in the 5th grade. And if you can get all those right, then you're left with the 70%, and all you need to do is get 4 out of 7 questions right with some general knowledge, and you can just pass these things, which I don't know how great that is for the public just to be able to, game the test. I had something else to say, but I forget what it was, but I would look into how other states are doing this as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Okay, seeing none. Can I ask board members to consider the following motion? Direct staff to pursue a legislative change to give the CSLB the authority to outsource exam testing administration, but not develop. Once the legislation authority becomes effective, direct staff to take all steps necessary to implement outsourcing of exam testing administration to an outside vendor.
So moved. Second.
You owe me a Coke.
Oh, boy. We have a motion and a second. Do board members have any comments or questions? Seeing none, does anyone from the public have any comments or questions? Please, can you do roll?
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Kevin Albanese.
Aye.
Frank Altamira.
Aye.
Augie Beltran.
Aye.
David Delatorre.
Aye.
Dave Diaz. Susan Granzella. Diana Love.
Aye.
Jim Ruane.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Mary Tykert.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Committee members, please turn to page 91. As many of you are aware, CSLB surveys individuals who file complaint with the board after the complaint process is concluded. During our last board meeting in Chico, a question was asked about whether any such survey is done with licensing applicants, which it is not. Based on that comment, staff put together a concept for an applicant survey that could be completed by applicants on the internet via a link sent to their email. Staff prepared several potential questions, which are on page 91. There is a motion from the licensing committee that directs staff to provide this survey to the full board for consideration and adoption, and to present the results to the satisfaction survey, or no, excuse me, results to the board annually. At the same time, the staff report results of the enforcement satisfaction survey. Since this recommendation comes from the committee to the board, it comes as a fully formed motion and needs no further second or first or second. With that being said, would board members like to make any alterations to potential survey questions that staff prepared, or should we proceed with the consideration and adoption of the committee's motion? Anybody want to make anybody from the board want to make a comment? Frank?
Are we going to have to approve each time they want to make changes to the questions, or do they have the flexibility to make modifications as necessary?
I would assume it'd have to come to the board. Christie, is that?
Well, I mean, it's up to you if you want to approve this currently and then delegate to staff the authority to make amendments as necessary.
I'd rather have them have the flexibility to
Okay.
come up with the appropriate questions.
And for what it's worth, I don't believe we had these potential questions when we approved it, did we?
No.
So I think we're approving the concept and the administration and leaving that to staff on the actual questions.
Okay, so any other board comments, questions? Anybody from the public? So, Justin?
I'm sorry to complicate things. I just want to make sure procedurally, can we add this at the moment, or?
Right, so the board can vote on this current motion and then make another motion to, in the future, authorize staff to make adjustments to the survey as necessary.
Okay, so we'll just do two?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so Felice, can you take roll?
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Kevin Albanese.
Aye.
Frank Altamira.
Aye.
Augie Beltran.
Aye.
David De La Torre.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Aye.
Susan Granzella. Diana Love.
Aye.
Jeremy Wayne.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Aye.
Mary Tyker. Aye. Motion passes.
Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion for the second phase of this?
I'll make a second motion to allow staff to update the questions on the survey as they deem appropriate and inform the board at its next regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay, Felice?
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Kevin Albanese.
Aye.
Frank Altamira.
Aye.
Augie Beltran.
Aye.
David De La Torre.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Yes.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Jimmy Wayne.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Mary Tyker. Motion passes.
My mic keeps shutting off, or maybe they want me to shut up.
I could say something.
You are laughing. The next item is an update on the CMEA grant disbursements for the current fiscal year. A summary of the planned disbursements is on page 95. Justin will provide a brief update.
Yes, so each year, just for the new board members, individuals who are renewing their license get an option to essentially make a donation to this account if they want. And we track how much money is in there, and we try to disperse grants to construction management schools throughout California. These 4 schools that you see on page 95 are the ones that applied for this current fiscal year. This is just an informational item, but we'll proceed with the process in the hopes that we'll make these awards in the spring. We just have to sort out a few procedural things, and then we'll plan to make those disbursements in the spring. Happy to answer any questions.
Is there any comments or questions from the board? Don't see any. Anything from the public? Okay, moving on. Next is agenda item 7, a review and discussion of the possible action to amend the licensing 2019 to 2021 strategic plan objectives. You can see the updates on page 99 of your meeting packet. Justin, can you give us an update on item 1.7 related to developing an online contractor licensing application?
Certainly. Our priorities continue to move forward. We're certainly meeting all of our deadlines in the strategic plan. One thing that has shifted is we wanted to focus on making sure the online renewal process got rolled out quickly. So our online renewal for sole owners, as I had previously said, with no additional RMO, or RME, no additional RME, will be rolled out this February. It'll actually be rolled out with the new fee schedule we've already discussed at the prior board meeting. In addition to that, we're seeking just a change in our deadline because we moved that renewal forward for our online application. We're asking that the new deadline be July. The minute the online renewal is up and running, we'll turn our attention to the application. Happy to answer any questions.
Do any board members have any comments? No. Is there any public comment? All right. Can I get a motion and a second to recommend that the board amend the licensing 2019 to 2021 strategic plan objective 1.7 target date to July 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any board members have any comments? Public have any comment?
Phil Coscianti. Can you give us an update on item 1.3, where we're at with that?
Oh, sure, hold on.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Item 1.3, I'll actually just defer to Chief Jay in just a moment. Just to recall, this is the legislative proposal for the new remodel classification. I think you all received an announcement from David last week on just our current progress, but the board has already approved it, and we're pursuing legislation in the coming year, but Chief Jay may have some additional comments.
Yes, we're happy to announce a co-authorship for introduction of this bill in January 2020. Senator McGuire will carry the bill, and it'll be co-authored by Assemblymember Lowe, who is the chair of the Assembly Business and Professions Committee, so that's really great news. So we'll have some more of that in the next update for Ledge.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, Felice, can you please take roll?
Yeah, Nancy.
Oh, Nancy? Oh. Felice? Yeah.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Kevin Albanese.
Aye.
Frank Altamura.
Aye.
Augie Beltran.
Aye.
David De La Torre.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Yes.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Jimmy Moran.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Mary Tykert.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, David, and our licensing committee.
Before we move on, I had one question. Can I go back to that one on the Construction Management Education Act, the grant?
Sure.
So my question was, is there a way we can see what that grant looks like? I don't think I've ever seen the grant, the actual wording of the grant. I'm kind of curious about it.
You mean the statute, or you just mean
Yeah,
our?
just anything that's related to it, I'd like to be able to read it up to see where we're issuing these grants. I'm kind of just curious what it says that they have to do in regards.
Oh, certainly, I'm happy to prepare that.
Okay,
I
thank
can, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. With that, let's take a quick 10-minute break and be back at 33. Okay, let's go back into order here, and let's go to Agenda Item F, Public Affairs, and for that, I would like to turn it over to our committee chair, Susan Granzella.
Thank you. Our first item is Agenda Item F1, which is the review and possible approval of the November 7th, 2019 Public Affairs Committee Meeting Summary Report. It starts on page 107. Do I have any edits to offer by board members? Are there any comments from the public about the summary report? Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I wasn't finished with my sentence. What a group.
I can't wait to get to the next agenda item.
I'll try to speed it along. We have the motion and second, and I I have a motion and second to approve the November 7th, 2019 Public Affairs Committee meeting summary report. Is there any public comment? Felice, can you please call roll?
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Kevin Albanese. Frank Altamura.
Aye.
Augie Beltran. David Delatorre.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Yes.
Susan Granzella.
Yes.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Jimmy Wayne.
Aye.
Nancy Springer is absent. And Mary Tyker.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next is item F2, the Public Affairs Program Update. Public Affairs Chief Rick Lopes was called away, and I have asked Information Officer Claire Goldstein to present the Public Affairs Update. Take it away.
Great, thank you, Susan. I'm just going to note a couple of things in the program update. So I just want to highlight that the new Digital Media Center is up and running. All the final walkthrough was completed and last-minute changes and adjustments were made. So we're really excited about this. This is going to give us the opportunity to produce more video and audio content. And with our new video specialist on staff, we hope to produce podcasts and all kinds of things. And also it allows us to do the streaming of live meetings such as this. So that is complete. And on page 114 of the packet, just one thing to note on the online highlights. This will come up again on the strategic plan item. One of the strategic plan items for public affairs is to increase outreach to licensees, and one of the ways in which we want to do that is to create a specific blog-style website for licensees, and we've been working on that. We have encountered some technical delays related to security, so we're working with our IT department here as well as the Office of Information Services at DCA to sort that out. So you will be asked later in the meeting to make an adjustment to our strategic plan target date on that. Later on that page, I just want to note on the social media, we continue to see growth in all of our social media channels. And again, with the new studio up and running, we're hoping to create more video content for social media. We find that visual content, graphics, and video engage more users, and we get more, I want to say hits, but I'm not sure that's the technical term in social media, but they're seen, more eyes see them. We'll go with that. So it continues to be an effective means to reach people. So the next few pages of the program update just provide more specific statistical information about those various social media efforts. The one thing I do just want to draw your attention to on that is on page 116, we have started a secondary Twitter account for media only to do that, to promote our press releases. That increasingly is media works in the social media world, so we're trying to make that adjustment as well. And then also on media, moving forward to page 119 of the packet, we do continue to send out press releases on a regular basis, particularly to support enforcement efforts and the sting operations of SWIFT. SWIFT has conducted a number of stings this week, so we anticipate sending out a number of press releases in the next few days. There was also a press event on September 19th that CSLB co-hosted a press conference in Fresno County around solar and concerns about fraudulent activity in that area. And that's also an agenda item for later, so I think that'll be talked about in more detail at that part of the agenda. So I won't go into too much detail on that. Also, just want to note on page 120 in our publications and graphic designs, we've been working on putting together the new law book for 2020, the big doorstop of a law book. So we've been working with LexisNexis, and we have approved the final page proofs They're going to start producing the book, and we expect to be distributing those to mid to end of January. So it'll be our delayed holiday gift to all of you. You will get this. So I do want to note that the graphic designer gave it a new look. So we have a new designed cover. So trying to make, keep you guys on your toes and make sure you're paying attention. So. We also regularly, on an as-needed basis, distribute industry bulletins. That's discussed on page 120. Next week, we'll be sending out an industry bulletin just outlining some of the features of the new laws that relate to contracting. That'll be going into effect January 1. So we always send that out every year to the industry. And then on page 121 of the packet is a discussion of the consumer and community outreach, which continues to be an important part of the public affairs work. As mentioned in the enforcement update with Missy, staff supported the work of local assistance centers around the fires in October, and the public affairs staff assisted with those efforts as well, providing materials. And as also was mentioned, I believe Board Member Springer mentioned it, the meeting with Paradise Town officials in September. Just want to make sure that you all know that we've continued to be in touch with town officials in Paradise, want to support any outreach or community work that they're doing in any way that we can. And so there's been discussion of various events and things that they might be sponsoring that we could participate in and make sure that we have a presence both for consumers and also for contractors who are interested in working in the area to make sure that they understand the contracting laws and that they're working legally. So we continue to be in touch. Just want to make sure you're all aware of that. And then lastly, just want to mention that on our very robust Senior Scam Stopper program, we had a very busy 2019, and things have quieted for the holidays, but those will be starting back up again in January of 2020. I believe the first one is scheduled for January 10th, starting next year. So happy to answer any questions that board members may have.
Thank you, Claire. We're raffling off first editions of the new book later, so if you want to sign it, a license law and reference book, yeah, there you go. It should be good, and it does look, the cover just makes it, a little bit more relevant now. The next item is F3, the review, discussion, and possible action on the 2020-2022 communications plan. This is on page 125. The text is on page 127. This is the communications plan that's not just for public affairs. This covers all of CSLB. It just happens to be on my agenda. I'm the lucky person, or on Rick's agenda. But what we'd like to do is go through some of the highlights here and then take a vote on accepting the communications plan. This is done every 3 years, and here is the highlights. So this plan, which starts on 127, provides a framework for all the internal and external communications the board plans to develop and manage over the next 3 years. This plan is used as the basis for creating Public Affairs Office's strategic plan objectives. It includes more than 12 different sections, including public affairs, mission statements, staff and financial resources, target audiences, communication messages, channels and tools, short-term and long-term communication goals, and tasks to measure success. I'd like to highlight that this plan includes an increased effort at communicating with licensee applicants, as well as an expansion of our video and audio production efforts. So keeping in line with what is going on in the world, we'll hopefully be able to reach more people and consumers during this, with this expanded communication plan. At this time, are there any questions or comments from board members? Are there any comments from the public? At this time, the Public Affairs Committee recommends that the board approve the CSLB's 2020 through 2022 communications plan. Since this plan was already approved by the Public Affairs Committee, it comes to the board as a fully formed motion and needs no first or second, thank you, goodness, prior to the vote. Any public comment? Felice, can you take the roll?
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Kevin Albanese. Frank Altamira.
Aye.
Augie Beltran.
Aye.
David Delatorre.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Yes.
Susan Granzella.
Yes.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Jim Ruane.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Mary Tykert.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. F4, update discussion and possible action to amend Public Affairs Strategic 2019-21 Strategic Plan Objectives. This is beginning on 137. Next is this update discussion and possible action for Public Affairs 2019-21. I'm having trouble with all these 20s. It's just, it's wrong, but strategic, how did that happen? Strategic Plan Objectives. We are requesting to amend the target date for two items, 4.5 and 4.7, as noted in your packet on page 62. Before we take action on the proposed amendments, I wanted to provide a status of all 10, and I will be brief, 10 strategic plan items. So item 4.1, items 4.1 and 4.2 are completed. 4.3 is no longer needed, so that will be, it's no longer needed. Item 4.4 is well underway. Two new suspects were both arrested in August, one arrested in Massachusetts, the other a man is suspected of several crimes in the wildfire debris cleanup in Santa Rosa, arrested in North Carolina. We've just added a third new suspect, and two more suspects have been submitted to be added. So in other words, with the enforcement divisions, we're identifying, correct? All of these, the most wanted list, as we were discussing. On item 4.5, the research has been finished, it's been completed on 4.5, which is the research and feasibility of creating a text alert program to communicate with licensees and consumers and implement if possible. So the research has been completed. Staff is working with CSLB's IT unit and the Department of Consumer Affairs Information Security Office to address security and content management questions, which will delay the implementation. I think we were talking about some of these issues. Staff has requested moving the implementation date from March 2020 to December 2020, and that's 4.5. 4.6, there has been a lot of work done to create a new contractor website. As content is being gathered and created, our IT staff is working with the Department of Consumer Affairs to put a system in place to host the site and streamline the process needed to post the materials online. So this is an overall improvement that we've been working on, and that is ongoing. 4.7, we're requesting a change. Staff met with the board's IT committee, which consists of Frank Altamira and myself. What a party. And determined that IT priorities should shift to online renewals for existing licensees and then return to the online application. So strategic plan originally said online application process, which is more complex than we thought. But we need to switch gears, as has been discussed, to the renewal online and get that in so that renewal online is simplified. Item 4.8 is on track and assigned to a new videographer, and that is the videographer who is now on our staff. So, on item 4.9, it was moved up to focus on the American with Disabilities Act compliance standards. Reviewing and updating the website content is being done on an ongoing basis, so that most of the work has been done. 4.10 is being handled by the new videographer. As we create those courses, our first course should be done by the end of the year. And I think, Claire, the end of the calendar year?
Yes, it should be done. The new videographer has been working on it, and they're just sorting out some technical glitches with getting folks to take the quiz portion.
Great. And I think it would be interesting if, for those moments in the board meetings when we need some new material, but to be able to see what it has been developed, because these are the things that will be accessed by our, the consumers and the contractors. So that would be great. At 4.10, I just finished. At this time, are there any comments or questions from board members?
I just want to say as far as 4.10, because some of the local building officials and throughout the state, we're helping to create that video, and we're really excited to see all the work that's been put behind that to make sure that it's accurate and that it's going to be educational. So thank you. I'm so happy to hear that that's going to be getting posted soon. So thanks.
Good, thank you for that. I didn't know they had contributed to that. At this time, the Public Affairs Committee recommends the board approve to amend the target dates of the two items, 4.5 and 4.7, in the 2019 through 2021 Public Affairs Strategic Plan. Since this was already approved by the Public Affairs Committee, it comes to the board as a fully formed motion and needs no first or second prior to a vote. Is there any public comment? Felice, can you call roll?
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Kevin Albanese.
Aye.
Frank Altamura.
Aye.
Augie Beltran.
Aye.
David Delatorre.
Aye.
David Diaz.
Yes.
Susan Granzella.
Yes.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Jim Wayne.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Mary Tykert.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Felice. And thank you for the work that you're doing. That concludes the Public Affairs report.